All birth mothers have an adoption relinquishment story, and along with that story comes their mindset about adoption. That story evolves over time, and so naturally, that mindset can change as well. Whether you are in an open adoption or not, when you get to reunion or your child becomes an adult for those in an open adoption, and you meet that adult, hear what that adult has to say about their feelings surrounding their relinquishment, and see their trials, tribulations, and trauma from that relinquishment, that story of yours expands some more and your mindset can change again. That is why I believe that there are 3 stages to the mindset of one's adoption relinquishment. But before I get into that, let me introduce myself. My name is Kat Davald, and I'm a 49-year-old birth mother, and I've been in reunion for 5 years with my 33-year-old daughter. So I've been wanting to make this video for quite some time because in my birth mother groups, there's becomes some, I don't want to say animosity, but I don't want to say bickering either, but it's kind of what it is, because there are those who are newer to adoption and they feel one way, and then there are older people who have gone through years and years of adoption and they have a different mindset. So you kind of have this butting of heads because two people think differently, and the ones who are newer don't want to hear what the older folks have to say. They tend to call us older folks who have been through a lot of adoption bitter and miserable and angry, and kind of rightfully so. And the older folks tend to call the younger ones who are in the newer adoptions in the fog, and not listening and that type of stuff. And both are wrong, kind of, but also kind of right, because yes, older ones are angry and we are bitter. Miserable, not so much, but when we had our adoptions, most of them were closed. And for those who are reaching this stage with open adoptions, even them, they realize that things are wrong with adoption as they are, and open adoptions don't guarantee happiness for the child, and that type of stuff. And then the younger ones, they want to, believe that they are not hurting their children, when it's not something that is done consciously, obviously, but they don't want to believe that adoption is the reason for unhappiness that their child may or may not encounter. So I digress. I'm going to move forward with the stages now. But before I do that, I just want to say that I am not addressing grief or sadness here. Every birth mother is going to have grief and sadness for the most part. We all, regardless if we have an open adoption and our child is a month old, or if we have a closed adoption and they're 30 years old, we're all having grief at some point or another, and sadness regarding the loss of our children to adoption. So I am not addressing that. I am simply addressing the mindset of how one tends to think about adoption as you move through this adoption journey that you have. So the first stage that I think that birth mothers, well, not even birth mother, at this point you're still an expectant mother because you are still pregnant, and so this is before the actual adoption takes place. The mindset, and this is pretty much due to coercive practices from adoption agencies, but the mindset is basically that The expectant mother is not good enough to raise the child, that they don't have enough money to raise the child, that they will be better off with a family that has more money and a mother and a father and perhaps siblings, that they will be better off if they go on vacations every year, that they will be better off if they receive all types of toys and trinkets and gifts. This is generally the mindset that is part of stage one. It's the mindset that the child will have a better life with another family, or that adoption will save the child. Now, the second stage that I think that we go through is you're actually a birth mother now. You've given your child up for adoption, and until that child is 25 years old. Now, I'd like to interject here and say that this kind of is not for those that are taken by CPS, forced adoptions, and that, because that's kind of a different story. This is more for people who do choose adoption when they go through this mindset of, I'm going to give my child up for adoption. That is where this is basically stemming from. CPS cases, foster cases is a bit different. So when your child is a child, and up to 25, and I say 25 because yes, we all become adults, quote unquote, at 18, but are we really? I mean, honestly, I really didn't start to think like a mature person until I was in my 30s. And I think 25, I mean, yes, I bought a house when I was 25. I started to settle down and everything, but that is when you do start to look inside yourself more. Your parents aren't as much of an influence in your life. You do start to look at different things in a different way, and you start to listen to outside factors and not just things from your parents. When you're a child, everybody knows that children are a reflection of their parents. You know, your religion is based off of what your parents' religion is. Your beliefs are based off of what your parents' beliefs are. So it is well known that that happens. Now, when an adult in like an adoptive parent or a birth parent that is in an open adoption says, "Oh, my child is happy," the child's going to say, "Oh, I'm happy." They don't generally speak up for themselves when they're that small. I didn't. I, was told to grin and bear it. I was told to keep quiet, that I'm such a little angel, and so I acted like that, but I was miserable inside. So a lot of times I hear birth mothers saying, "Oh, my child has no trauma. Oh, they are thriving. They are so happy." And they might be in a good situation and everything, but you don't know how that child actually feels, because if unless they're verbalizing it to you, many times they do not. Many times they keep it to themselves. I listen to a lot of adoptees and listen to a lot of adoptee TikTok, and I'm in a bunch of groups, and I do listen to what they say, and I take that in and understand it, for they don't share unless it's in their own community, which would be another adoptee. So another thing that a lot of birth parents say, especially birth moms, is, "Oh, I've given a couple that couldn't have children a gift, a blessing, by giving them a child to raise." And I said the same thing too. So there's that they did this amazing thing, that they gave them this gift, and the child was a gift. And if you listen to a lot of adoptees, they don't like being referred to as gifts. So one thing I've heard a lot of birth parents say is they've given another couple a chance to parent who haven't been able to have children. That is another mindset of this second stage that, oh, you've done this great deed to, give this child to another couple to parent. Now, a lot of this is for open adoptions. Now, when there's an open adoption that turns closed, well, you no longer have that connection with that child, so now you're cut off. But I also hear a lot of people still saying, I haven't seen my child in such and such. Maybe I see them on Facebook, or I get a picture like once every 7 years or something crazy like that. But they always say, I know they're well taken care of. I know they're loved. And I did this wonderful thing by giving these people a chance to parent. But yet you're still hurting and you're still without that contact that you were supposed to have with your open adoption. And then there's closed adoptions, and you really don't know. And you think that I've done this wonderful thing, and I've given this child to this family to raise, but you don't know if they're having any trauma. You don't know if they're sad and they miss you, or how they're reacting in school, or how they're reacting at home. You don't know what's going on. So you're totally closed to the fact that you don't know how their life is at all. You think you did a good thing. The child has two parents. They can go on vacation. They can go and get, all the riches and all the material things that money can buy. But you don't know this for certain. You Everything has been closed, so you don't know exactly how that child is living. And I think that this is the stage two where it's basic disassociation, and you just hope that this is the reality for your child, even though you may not know. But you always think that you've done this great deed, and your child is better off without you. It's still a replaying factor that your child is better off in this situation because you would never have been able to do it, or what have you. And then the stage three comes, and this is when your child reaches adulthood and they start to think for themselves, and they start to look into their adoption and look into their feelings, and sometimes vocalize how they feel about their adoption. Birth moms now start to realize the damage that adoption does, and they start to listen to adoptees and how they feel about their own relinquishment, whether that be their own adoptees or other adoptees in groups. You start to learn and you start to listen to how it has affected them, and think to yourself how it possibly could have affected your child as well. A lot of adoptees talk about the longing to reconnect with their birth parents, or not feeling like they fit in to the family that they were with, and just having that disconnect, never feeling like a part of the family. And they may open up more after they have their own child and start their own family. Sometimes that's a triggering point for them, and then they start to think like, hey, I, want to meet my birth mom or my birth dad, my birth family, and that starts the ball rolling for them at times. And then us birth parents, we start to see their trauma. We start to see their trauma in the things that they do and the things that they say. Now, adoptee loyalty is a traumatic response to adoption. Adoptee loyalty is not a bad thing. I'm not going to get into it too much because I already did a video on it, and I will link it up right here for you and down below in the description if you'd like to take a look at that later. So adoptee loyalty is one type of traumatic response, and you can take that as, okay, this is how it has affected my child. And then there's also abusive behaviors. Sometimes adoptees will act out verbally, and they'll be usury, and they'll be, just angry. And sometimes even drugs or alcohol can be abused, and that is a traumatic response to adoption. It doesn't necessarily have to be, but a lot of times that is the root cause of their drug or alcohol abuse. So why is this so important? Like I said in the beginning, I'm hoping that those that have children that are under 25 can understand where us older people are coming from and vice versa. I'm hoping that the older folks can understand where the younger ones are coming from as well, because I was part of all three stages. And a lot of it was coercive, but now I know better, and but I also understand why the younger people still remain with the hopes that they did a good thing and those types of things. I mean, I was disassociated, and I mean, that's part of it. It's a trauma response for us too. So I want to say to those that have children under 25 is you don't know how your story will change. If you have a child that you gave up for adoption and that child is under 25, you don't know how that child will feel when they were older. You cannot make a blind statement like my child is happy because you don't honestly know how they feel inside. And they can tell you, yes, I'm happy, but is it the truth? I lie so much about stuff like that. And so many people can too. I'd also like to say listen to people who walk the path before you. We don't try to say things out of being mean or anything like that. We just try to, at least I do, I try to help and educate people so that they can have an idea of how things might go for them down the line. And obviously, it's not definite. It's not a definite that your child is going to have any issues at all, but it's good to be aware of. It's good to know what potentially can happen. And just don't snub those that tell you to be aware. Honestly, I mean, calling people bitter and miserable and angry, I mean, that's not helpful for anyone. Snubbing us in that type of way is just like I said, it's just not helpful. And for those that are in reunion and have children that are over 25 and you see their trauma and everything, educate and talk about your experiences, but don't try to force others to listen. Try to do it in an educational way and a non accusatory way so that it can just be a vital piece of information that somebody can take down the road. Sometimes if you try to push too hard, you end up being a dead horse. So all you can do is try. All you can do is put you know, the words out there, and if people want to take that words and listen to it and maybe store it in a memory bank for later on down the road, then that's great. If not, then don't overexcite yourself and bring too much anxiety to yourself trying to make others understand where you may be coming from. Do realize that they will understand when they meet their adult children. It's inevitable for the most part, but just try to educate and don't pressure, because I remember being that young and I don't know if I would have been so easily influenced by somebody telling me that I was causing trauma to my daughter because of the fact that I was completely disassociated. And I think some of these younger people are too. You never know. You never know how actually somebody's going through it. Some people listen, some people don't, some people are disassociated, some people are not. But all you can do is try. All you can do is mention these things and hope that they will listen and grow and educate themselves so that when they do come to the time of reunion, that they are prepared. So in closing, what you believe about the relinquishment of your child is bound to change as you move through this difficult journey. I was fully disassociated for 28 years and thought the way I was told to think, that I had done a wonderful thing and that my child would have a better life without me. Once I reached reunion and began to come out of that disassociation, I realized that it was much more complex than that, and my views began to change. It was bound to happen. I just didn't realize it. You may not either. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.